Hi there and welcome to my 12th tutorial on HTML and web structure. This tutorial will cover repetition aspects in programming on JavaScript. And by repetition, I mean loops and loop statements, very common in programming language, and the last chain in the programming structure, i.e. sequence, selection and repetition. That's the last point in the programming. So you have sequence, selection, then repetition, three aspects. With loops, you will learn how to produce programs, in this case pages, that repeat some kind of process a couple of times. And this tutorial will cover only the structure and the simple usage of loops. But my next tutorial, which I will do in the future, will show you how to nest the statements with the loops as well as with the ifs. So I will show you how to nest those statements to create a more complex pages with more complex conditions. So that's that, and I will keep it simple, this tutorial, because there's lots to explain, even about the simple aspects of the loops. So I will keep it simple just to make sure the tutorial is not too long. And I can tell you from the beginning now, we have three different types of loops, and I will explain each and every for you one by one. So let's start with the for loop. The for loop is especially designed for a programmer to use it when we know the outcome of numbers of repeats, or there will be specific number which will indicate the limit of repeats. Now in the condition we state we have our counter. We have to have a counter, and this counter is increased by specific amounts which you describe to the program, to the page or the for loop, and it's increased each time the loops goes around. And this has its own limits, because the condition can be only numeric condition. You cannot have a string condition. Therefore the numeric condition will only count numbers. Of course you can have floats, but that's not very sufficient, because floats have 0, 1.0 and so on. So if you increase by 0.1, for example, you can go on by many times. So it's always better to use integers in this case, and whole numbers. So how the for loop looks like. So the for loop starts with the keyword for. Now we have opened the bracket and we have a choice. The first thing we have to do is assign statement. Now if you want to assign only, you write the variable name equals to something. That's the assign statement. But if you don't have the variable already declared, like I do, for example, I don't have the variable, I have to say var number, something like this, equals 0. And that's the separator. Semicolon is the separator. Of course you can declare the variable somewhere else, for example here, var number, and don't assign anything to it. You don't have to. And then you do something like this then. So it's up to you if you want to do it like this or like this. I will do it like this. I will stay like this now with this method, and number is equal to 0. You have to have the assign statement first. Now there's the condition. After the separator, we separate the parts. We have three different parts in our for loop. First one is assign statement. Now we have the condition statement, which have to include the counter. So number, for example, is less than a specific number or a variable as well. So you can set a condition on the variables as well. So it's not limited to just hard values, but you can use variable. For this matter, I will just use hard value just to make it simple and short. Again, a separator, and then we state our increment statement. We have to increment the number this is our counter, so we have to increment the counter for the loop to finish. That's the limiter, the condition and the counter basically. So simply say number plus plus. Of course this statement can be increased by any number. Mostly you will use probably by plus plus or minus minus you can do, but it's not used most of the times. But you can have minus minus, which is simply -1, or plus plus, which is +1. You can have also plus equals 1 or 2 actually, because it will add 2 to the counter. So from 0 it will be 0, then it will be 2, 4, and so on. So you can have a specific number of repeats of how many times you want, how much you want to increase the counter, or like this. So it's not just limited to 1 or plus plus. Okay, so this between those curly brackets, now we have our actions. Now in the actions we can write pretty much anything, and we can add variables together. We can have variable plus variable, then print it out, for example. And let's have, for example, var, let's say number 2, and that equals, let's say 10. It doesn't matter, I can declare it here, and I will say number 2, let's say, equals to number plus number 2, like so. So this will produce a calculation for me, and now I'll print it out. Document.write and number 2. So I'll print out number 2 simply. Now if I run this loop will go around for 10 times, because the counter is 0. It must be less than 10, so it's up to 9. So 0 to 9 is 10 simply. And when I save this, I print a... Oh, I didn't do the break statement. Some of the cases, I know you can write line like this, write line like this. ln you can add, which will write a line, and I don't know if this will work actually here. No, it just pasted it, which should write a line. And nevertheless, you can do something like this. In my case, it's pasted in. But if it doesn't work, like for me, you can just use br like so, and it will break it properly. So it will do it on another line like so. So you have 10, 11, 12. So to the 10, I add a counter variable, which is 0 at the beginning, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So as you can see, it printed out the statement 10 times. Now this is one way of creating your for loop. Now we have one way of creating your loops, and this is one type of loop. Now we have also a different type of loop. The second type of loop is, let me just put another below. The second type of loop we have is the while loop. Sorry, the while loop is a bit different than for loop, because in the while loop we have only condition in the brackets. So if we use some kind of condition like we did here with the variable, with the counter and a numeric variable as a condition, then we have to increment the number inside the loop. If we don't do this, we will create an infinite loop. That means the loop will never stop. And what this means is that the loop will go forever simply. And so for example, if I create while loop and open the bracket, create a condition, for example, number is less than 5 or 10, doesn't matter, 5. Now the number, let's just call it here, number equals 0, like so. So if I create this loop and I run this page, when I open the page, let's say I will print out I will do the same thing actually. I will just copy it and simply print it out, but I'm not adding the counter, so the number itself will not increase. So what will happen now? As you can see, the page doesn't load even, and it will take a bit of the time, but as you can see, it didn't even show anything. That is because the loop cannot stop, so the page is not in real time, so it's not updated all the time. Therefore the loop will never stop, and you won't see anything on your page basically. But if you want this to stop, this is the infinite loop actually. So this is how it will look like. The page will never load, like for example like this. It will never load because the loop will never stop, and because the page is not in real time, like because the programs, for example in C++, when you program on console, you have it in real time and everything is done in real time, so you can actually see when the infinite loop is happening. You can actually see those numbers getting printed out. Here you cannot, unfortunately, it doesn't work like this. So it's printing out only the result. So this is how the infinite loops look like. So basically, if the page you have will not work, and so from stop this from happening, you have to say number plus plus, for example. This will increase the number, therefore the condition in here is falsifiable, and you can it's falsifiable, and we'll see the output now. So if I did I save it? I don't know. Okay, let's save it, and if I refresh it, you actually see the output from here. That's the output of the second loop. So you see the output 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 because I've set it to 5. And that's how it works basically with the for loop and while loop. That's the main difference. And also the other main difference, let's say, is that you can create conditions which are with the string. So it's not numeric based like the for loop. For loop is only numeric based. You cannot have condition which is not numeric. You have to have a number because it's acts like a counter, and counter is a number basically. But here you can say do the loop while the number is equal to red, for example, is equal like this, for example, red, you can say like so. And then in your action somewhere you have indicator which makes this a the while loop falsifiable. That means something has to make this number equal red. So something has to make this number equal red. If you don't do this, you will get the infinite loop. Let's change it back. Okay, so that's how you can create loops with the strings. Now, there's the third type of the loop we have. The third type is the do-while loop. The do-while loop is it's pretty much the same as while loop. Pretty much the same conditions apply, but the functionality is a bit different. The build, of course, is a bit different, but also the functionality of the loop is different. Let me just copy this MBR. I don't know if you have to. I'll copy this and I'll simply break it without the number. Okay, let me just break it here, and so that you will see the difference. So do while, you start with the do keyword, then you just space it, then enter, and whatever. You open the actions, close the actions, and at the end you write while, like so. Then you state the condition. For example, number is less than 5, and you have to close it with a semicolon. In previous statement, for example, here you didn't have to close it with semicolon as well as here, but in I just space it this, okay, but in here you have to finish it with a semicolon. Now whatever the functionality is different in such way that whenever the condition is true or false, the action will be executed at least once. Therefore, if the condition of the while is false right now, for example, if I say now number is equal 10, which is a number is more than 5, the condition is false. But if I copy this, for example, let's copy this and I print it, I paste it, sorry, and if I run this code, this will be printed once, and I will show you this by running the script. 20. Now, why this is printed once? The other one didn't get printed for some reason, doesn't matter, but this one gets printed once only because number is 10 and simply it shouldn't be printed like the other one. It's not printed. So why is it printed? Because the actions are first, then there is the condition. So from the build, it's pretty common sense that this one is done first and this one is done last. So whatever is here, it will be done, executed, and then the condition will be checked. If the condition is false, it will simply go out of the loop and do whatever it has to do below. If there is nothing, then we'll simply, that's it, call it a day, and that's it. And so this is the difference basically and when you create a do while and while loop. That's the main difference between them. This one executes the code at least once, and this one executes the code only if the condition is true. So if the condition is false, it won't be executed even once. And that's how it works with the for loop and the while and do while loops. So that's how it looks from the basic perspective of the loops. As I said, you can use it for, as I said, calculations, to print out the calculations. Later on, you will use it with arrays. The for loop, for example, for loop has array has a specific number of indexes. So you will use the for loop to print out the array, for example. You can use the for loop to ask for, I don't know, inputs, 10 times inputs. You want to ask for 10 inputs from the user, and you will ask with the for loop, for example, instead of writing 10 times the same statement, ask for input, and stuff like this. You can use the for loop or while loop, asking 10 times for the input. So it's like easing your way and your coding, because you would have to repeat this stuff without the loops. You would have to repeat this stuff a couple of times, the same code, which is not very sufficient. Therefore, you use the for loop, which repeats the code for you a couple of times, and there's no problem with it. So that's pretty much the idea of the loops, and it works pretty much the same in every programming language. So if you know, for example, C++ or Java, the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop works pretty much the same basis as you do with the Java or C++. It's pretty much even the syntax is the same. So it's pretty simple if you know some other programming language. So you have an advantage. So you know how to use it, and it's pretty much the same syntax, and that's how you use it. So that's the end of the tutorial. Visit my webpage and YouTube channel for more tutorials. And if you like my videos, subscribe on the channel or my videos. And there's still more tutorials to come from HTML web structure. I will do my tutorials about forms later on, and about the input statements, how you can get input without the forms, how you can output something in a box as well, without the forms as well. So there are a couple of useful methods and stuff like this. I will also, in my next tutorial, I will show you how to do stuff with strings, with nested statements, so you'll learn those, and pretty much interesting. So that's the end. I will see you in my next tutorial, and bye.